So when Julie and I thought about this series of these last 4 weeks, we thought that this one we'd start to talk about going back. And I have to say, a few days ago when I was thinking about today, I thought, who are we kidding? Nobody's going back to work anytime soon. But I will say that over the last couple of days in New York, we're seeing that, our numbers are going down, as they say. So we're seeing success in all of the efforts that we've been making. And I did start to get this little bit of excitement about the summer, that we might be able to do something, interesting or fun this summer. So I think we are thinking about going back. And for many of you, it might be feeling like, I don't know, like this has been kind of nice, being at home, even though you still have a boss, for many of you, those who are working. It's not the same as being in the office where the boss is in the, space next to you. So I think we've gained a little bit of, there's like a dignity to being able to do things on your own terms and in your own way that we want to maintain when we go back to work, right? And it reminded me, as I thought about today, that when I started my coaching practice in 2008, I was doing a lot of work at the time with job search and helping people find new jobs or transition jobs. And at the time, they would come to me and they would say, Claire, I need a new job now. And I would say, okay, well, to be honest, I think it's going to take anywhere from 3 to 6 months. And they would say, what? No. It can't take that long. I need it in a month. Because I cannot go back to that horrible boss. I cannot go back. She's a monster. He's a monster. It's a micromanager. The place is toxic. It's horrible. And then I would say, well, I don't, maybe you have to find another coach because I can't really promise you that. And they would say, okay, fine. So then tell me how to deal with my boss and with my colleagues because it's really unbearable. So we started to do work about influence in the office place and to teach the tools specifically that I'm going to talk to you about today. And what started happening is that after a couple of months, they would say things to me like, oh my God, Claire, I was leaving the office the other day and my boss said, oh, you know what, Julie, you did such a good job with the client today that I really want you to take on this bigger client next week. Can you do the presentation? And then, another one said to me, oh, my boss wants me to take on this project. The boss who I told you doesn't trust me suddenly wants me to take on a project that we're going to present to the board of directors. Can you believe it? And so little by little, these people who were convinced that they could never stay in this job, not only ended up staying, but they ended up getting promoted and promoted more than once. And what was surprising to me at the time, this was in the first and second year of my business, is that, either I failed as a job search coach, that could be the conclusion, but I think really it was more that we think when we're unhappy at work or when we don't have the influence that we'd like, we often come to the conclusion that we need to leave, that we're in the wrong job, that maybe a different boss would be nicer. And what I have to tell you is that there are tools for influencing and navigating the politics and the personalities of your job that can have a huge impact on your workplace happiness. Now, I don't want to diminish if some of you are truly unhappy and you're truly in the wrong job and your boss is truly a monster. There is a time when you have to go, right? And I think that can be true for many of us at one time in career, but it's a shame to spend your time and precious energy chasing after a perfect job when in fact you would make much more progress by understanding how to manage different personalities. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I would love if you guys would begin by answering a question. in the box, right? Start sending me a chat, and you could send it to me privately if you don't want to share it, and I won't share your name, or you can send it to everyone. But I want you to start typing, what are you most concerned about when it comes to going back to the office? Okay? What are you most concerned about with the return to work? And also, here's another, so I have two questions. What is the most surprising thing that you've enjoyed about being home? Okay, those are my two questions, and then we'll have a good discussion at the end. Now, so we're going to talk today about learning different work styles, about understanding your needs, because I think what happens, and I would venture to say this happens more with women than with men, is that we don't, many of us, not all of us, but women are often socialized to sacrifice and to put our needs last. And so we get to the point where we don't even understand our needs. And I've seen this with so many of our clients. They don't even really know what they want, even in the smallest little ways. So I think understanding what you really need is often a first step in being able to then negotiate that. And then know how to communicate your needs, right? So I think sometimes also we have needs, but we don't know how to communicate them, and we back off. We just forget about it, and we find other ways to deal through meditation. And, you know, I'm all for meditation, but it's not fair that I have to spend my time meditating because somebody else won't give me, won't let me have what I want, right? Or what I need. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. The tool that I'm using today is something called the social style, okay? And the social style is a tool that we use a lot in at Columbia and in many of the classes. I use it a lot in corporate America. And you've probably, some of you heard of the Myers-Briggs type indicator, or maybe some of you have experienced the DISC model in your offices. So this tool, the social style, is, and maybe some of you haven't experienced the social style, this is very close to the DISC. It's different from the Myers-Briggs. The Myers-Briggs has 16 personality types, and the Myers-Briggs really focuses on understanding yourself and what you want. It's an amazing tool for job search, but I find it less practical to use in office settings because it's so complicated. There are 16 different types. The advantage to this model, which is very similar to the DISC, is that there are 4 personality styles or 4 behavioral styles. And very often I get the criticism that, you know, I don't fit in one of 4 boxes, it's too limiting. And while I say, of course, you know, we're not just 4 boxes, but the advantage to having a way to navigate with only 4 personalities makes it a much more practical tool to use. And we're going to go into it, and I hope you'll agree with me as you see it. So one of the reasons I love this tool is that it helps you understand other people's behavior so that you can adapt and build relationship. And so it helps you work with your manager, right? So you can manage upwards more effectively. It helps you if you have people who are reporting to you, it helps you there. There might be people in other departments, right? You might have customers that you need to influence. It can help you reduce stress, and because again, if you know what you need and you know how to negotiate and navigate that, can be very helpful for having less stress at work. I think it helps us raise our hand and say more and take more risk in the office place. And then with change and innovation, there's other ways that it helps. But so I'm going to dive into this. The tool is called the social style, and it's based on comfortable patterns of behavior. So when we know how people typically behave, it allows you to predict their future behavior, and it also helps you to adapt to them, right? What we have is that situational tension, which is very normal. We always have situational tension in almost every interaction. Right now, there's tension for me because I want to do a good job. I want to finish on time so that we have time for Q&A, right? There's situational tension, which drives our behavior. And by driving the behavior, it means there's tension, and based on our preferences or our personalities or our behavioral style, we will have a response. Maybe we'll scream like the little girl and become aggressive, or maybe we'll cry, or maybe we will withdraw and just go in the other room because we don't like the tension, we want to avoid it. And whatever response we tend to have will reduce that tension, which then reinforces that response. So when the girl screams, she says, oh, I feel better now. Next time I should scream again, because this works very nicely. So that happens at a very young age. And I have this little girl who's 6 or 7. It typically is locked in by the time we're 8 or 10 years old, okay? Now, the relationship to tension, interpersonal tension, is very important because it also drives productivity. So here we have low tension, but low productivity. So this is maybe when you're on a beach, you know, on vacation, and you're drinking a margarita, and, you know, there's no productivity, but you're very relaxed. Here is when you're working effectively on a team. You know, Julie and I work very effectively together. We have fun, we laugh, we have high productivity. There's a lot of trust there, okay? And this is a great place to be. Where it becomes difficult is when we have too much tension. Maybe because we're overworked, maybe because we don't have a good relationship to our boss or to other colleagues. And then we become a little bit like when, you know, when your computer has too many apps open and it stops and it becomes really slow, okay? So this is what we want to avoid. And as you go back to the office, I'd love for you to use this time of self-awareness where you've been on your own. You might understand more about what you need and what you want and what works for you from a time management point of view, from a, you know, working alone or with others point of view. And you can take that with you, okay? So the way that this model works is that it's based on observable behavior. So it's a little bit different than a typical personality test in that it doesn't necessarily talk about your intention, your aspirations for life, your hopes and dreams. It simply talks about the behaviors that others can observe. So, you know, an aspect of your personality might be that you're honest, intelligent, or arrogant. Somebody might have a judgment about you. I like him, he annoys me. But those are not observable behavior. The things that are observable are here. What do we say and do? Do we speak quietly or loudly? Do we talk fast or slow? Do we have a very animated face? What is our voice like? Do we make eye contact? Are we casual or more formal in our posture? And do we lean back or forward? Okay? And I'm going to take you through those. So this tool measures 3 scales. The first one is assertiveness, which we call asking or telling. The second one is responsiveness, which is a measure of how much emotion we reveal. And the third one is what we call versatility. The first 2, assertiveness and responsiveness, those 2 are on an XY axis, which we'll see in a moment. And they define these behavioral styles. The versatility is a measure of how effectively you can flex to the other styles. Okay, what I want you to do is write down on a piece of paper, okay, where you think you are on this, and I'm going to go through it in a minute. So first, where do you think you would be on this? And then second, I want you to think of someone that you're feeling a little discomfort or anxiety about returning to work with. okay? Maybe there's someone at work that you don't love, or that you have a difficulty getting along with, or you don't understand them, and you've enjoyed not having to see them. Or maybe a classmate, right? So think about that person. Okay, what we have here is, if you tend to talk faster, more, and more loudly, if you use your hands a lot and you tend to lean forward and you have a lot of direct eye contact, give yourself an A. If you're a little bit less of all those things, give yourself a B. If you tend to speak more slowly, less, and more quietly, if you're more relaxed, you lean back and you have less eye contact, then if you're moderate in those things, give yourself a D. But if you know you're pretty squarely in those areas, then give yourself a D, okay? And then do the same for this person that you're thinking of. Okay, now we have the other axis. And in this one, it's a little bit confusing. I find this one confusing, but if you, on your verbal behaviors, if you tend to have a voice that is more stable and monotone, you focus on tasks, facts, and data. If you tend to use your hands less, have a more formal or rigid body posture, and control your facial expression, give yourself a 1, okay? If you tend to have a lot of emotion in your voice and inflection, if you talk about people, stories, opinion, you use your hands, you're more casual and animated, then you can give yourself a 4 down here. And then depending on where you think you are on the scale, you can give yourself a 2 or a 3, okay? So you also want to give yourself here 1, 2, 3, or 4. And you want to do the same for this person that you've written down, who you're feeling uncomfortable about being reunited with, okay? I'll just give you a few more seconds to do that. Okay, so what happens with these styles, or these 2 measures, is that they define 4 styles. The first one, where we begin, is called the driving style. And this is someone who is what we call tell assertive, meaning this person will tend to speak first when they enter into the room rather than listen first, okay? So these people in the driving style are tell assertive, and they tend to control the expression of emotion. So they're faster paced, they want to control, they often take initiative, they look like a leader because they say, I know what we need to do, and they define, you know, the actions. They tend to be very work focused, so they're not as concerned for relationship and being nice. They tend to work in the present. They're very into executing what needs to be done now. They like to direct the actions of others, and they avoid inaction, so they don't like to sit still. The expressive style is also tends to talk first, but they're much more, they look much more emotional on the outside. So they're faster paced. They make efforts to involve. These are often people who you see at parties, and they're very inclusive. They want people to come on and let's all do it together. They show less concern for routine, so they're often very spontaneous. They tend to think about the future and vision, and they want to know what's going to happen down the road. They can be impulsive, and they like to avoid isolation, okay? Then on the amiable style, we have someone who is ask assertive. So these people will listen before they speak, and they tend to also show their emotions. They're slower paced, they make a lot of effort to relate, they want relationship above all. They're not very concerned with affecting change, meaning they're concerned with keeping everybody happy, and so they don't like to rock the boat. Okay, they work in the present. They tend to be very supportive of others, and they tend to avoid conflict. And that is also because they care deeply about relationships, so they don't want to upset anyone. And then we have the ask assertive, who tends to listen first, but is more controlled in their expression of emotion. And so they're the analytical style. They're slower paced, slower to act. They love to organize things. These are typically engineers, architects, people who like process and planning, okay? Again, less concern for relationships because they're in the data and the facts. They work in the historical time frame, so they're very good at understanding how the past informs the future. They take action cautiously, and they like to avoid personal involvement, okay? After that, each of these styles has characteristics, and they have these three things. They have a style need, which is the general goal of each style. They have an orientation, which is the behavior that they use to obtain their style need. And then they have a growth action, and that's our nice way of saying what is the weakness that goes with this style, okay? So what we have here are that the driving style wants results. These are people who are extremely deadline driven. They will not miss a deadline. They'll stay out late. They often will, they're the type of person that can become frustrated with team members who seem less motivated, and they'll take back work if they have a concern that others aren't moving fast enough. So there can be a danger of burnout because they tend to do a lot of work, okay? They want to be in action. They don't like to slow down and listen. They're very good at seeing the pathway forward, seeing the roadmap, and everything that slows that down, they don't want to listen, right? Because they know what they want to do. The expressive style, they need personal approval. So these are the folks that they want to be loved by everybody. They want a lot of recognition for all the wonderful things they do. They're very spontaneous, right? So I often say, if you're in front of a client doing a presentation and your PowerPoint fails, it's great if you have an expressive in the room, because they can like just create a show and make it fun, and they'll, figure out how to connect. Their growth action is to check, because they tend to talk too much, okay? But these people are often the salespeople. They're very inclusive. They can be visionary, right? And they're amazing in that way. The amiable people, they need personal security. So I sometimes joke and I say, these are the people who come to meetings with cookies, right? Because for them, they need to create I know Julie's laughing at me. They will go to the ends of the earth with you as long as they feel that there's deep trust and they have a strong relationship to you, okay? Their difficulty is that they don't like to initiate, because initiating, these people wait to listen what other people are thinking before. They'd much rather agree with what other people are thinking than say, I think this, and then risk a conflict or a confrontation. There was something else I wanted to say. Yeah, and what's interesting, if you feel like you're relating to that amiable, what can sometimes happen, well, we'll go over that in a little bit. The analytical person needs to be right. These are often people who are very good at research and absorbing facts and data. They love to learn. And so they have so many facts in their head that when they're not correct, it's deeply embarrassing, okay? They are often introverted, and they would rather just be alone to think, and to figure things out. They don't like to, if the expressive people down here like to have a lot of rich dialogue and figure things out with a verbal processing, The analytical people would much rather be alone. They're more creative. They think better when they're by themselves. And their growth action is what we call declare. So they need to tell people more of what they're thinking, because too often they don't want to share what they're thinking. They want to just figure it out first. But that can be very difficult in team. You know, if you're doing project management in a team and you have someone who never gives you an update of what's going on, it can be very frustrating. So each style contributes to the whole, okay? And what I want to, why I say this is that sometimes, and maybe you guys are already seeing, I'd love if you like already write in the chat, which style do you think you are? All right. And which style do you think is the person who drives you crazy, or who you feel anxiety about the return to work? Give me those two. But I say that each style contributes to the whole because what's so important in teams is that you really need all of these energies to be effective. You can't have, you know, only expressive people and yeah, they all get along, but they can't get anything done because they don't have the analytical people to help them create systems and stabilize an organization. So what we have here are the driving style people are often considered the change leaders, because driving style people can see around the corner and they're very good at execution. And so Steve Jobs is a great example of or Elon Musk, or you know, the guy from Virgin Atlantic. These are often entrepreneurs. They see what needs to be done and they create a roadmap and they go. So that's them. The expressive people are often the ones who say, hey, you know what, that guy has an amazing idea. Let's all, come on guys, let's do it. And so they're amazing salespeople, and they're called the vision leaders, right? They put the meat on the bones of the idea and they really create a vision that everyone can get behind, okay? The amiable people are the people leaders. So then as an organization develops and gets bigger and you have teams, these are the people who aren't just good at doing it themselves, they're good at enabling and mobilizing other people to do it. So let's take the example of Steve Jobs, right? So he had a great idea for an Apple computer. Then he had a sales team that said, wow, this guy, it's amazing. You know, you guys should do this. Let's get on board. And then he had a group of people, then the team expanded and you started to have people who said, okay, now I'm the boss of these 16 salespeople. I need to train you how to go out and do an amazing job. Or I need to train all these programmers how to stay motivated, right? So you have internal teams, and these people are very good at motivating them and maximizing their productivity. And then the analytical people are very good at stabilizing an organization. So these are the standards leaders. So, you know, with Apple, these would be the people who, I mean, my goodness, the systems are incredible. The people who, you know, the architects who created the retail shops so that they all look exactly alike, right? The branding, the consistency, all of that, okay? Compliance. All right, I'm gonna look a little bit at the comments to see what we've got. Oh, am I gonna have to, I think I might have to stop sharing. I'm gonna, how do I see the comments?
If you, I don't know what your screen looks like right now, but if you see like more 3 little dots, there's chat, and you click on chat, it'll pop up.
Oh. Ah, yay. All right, I'm gonna put on my glasses. Envying my colleagues that they're able to work on more interesting projects and have more responsibility. At home, I just concentrate on my tasks and don't, yeah, that, wow. So thank you for that, because, and for the honesty with that one, because, you know, one of the beautiful things about any personality assessment, and I encourage you to look at the social style, but also to look at the Myers-Briggs, is that as you mature professionally and in life, it can be so wonderful to know what you're good at and to focus on what you're good at and to understand the contribution that you make, right? Because I think when we really appreciate what we're good at, we can let go of the things that we're not. Not that we never have to do those things. Sometimes you have to, sometimes I have to do accounting even though I hate it. But I don't judge myself anymore because I don't like it. There's an important distinction between, and I know it doesn't energize me, it exhausts me. So, okay, good. I used to have an hour commute, which I no longer have. So getting back to the routine where I add those 2 hours will not be easy. That's true. I absolutely agree. It's like a half an hour commute is nice to clear your head, but 2 hours is a lot. Started working in a new team shortly before the quarantine. I'm worried about having to start from square one and getting to know everyone. So, what I would recommend to you is use something like the social style. Julie's going to be sending these out to everyone, and I would invite you to really study this model and understand the different personalities so that you can make connection and build relationship faster, okay? I'm concerned once we're back in the office, everyone, to catch up. We're super busy pre-quarantine and spreading ourselves thin, and I don't think we should necessarily go back to that. I think you're right. What I'm going to be talking about at 5 o'clock on Facebook is that I think a lot of us thought, oh, well, I'm going to go home and I'm going to have so much time that in addition to my full-time job, I'm also going to be cooking for my children and husband and everything. And we just added it to the to-do list. And many of us never reprioritized. And so now we're going to exhaust ourselves during the coronavirus and then again exhaust ourselves when we go back. So you have to think about that and do try to give yourself some recovery time while you're home, right? But that's it sounds like what you need is more slow time, and how can you navigate that? Okay, hiding documents and information that I need for my work. Wow. Yeah, less stressed at home. That sounds like a tough work environment. And yeah, I wish I had a quick answer for that. I don't have a quick answer for that today, but let me keep thinking on that one. Yeah, expressive and analytical, good. There are a lot of mixed ones. Yeah, Julie and I are both expressive and amiable, so there's a mix. The expressive and analytical isn't the ones that crisscross across diagonal are interesting because they tend to be more I wouldn't say oppositional energy, but it can be a little schizophrenic, but it can also be extremely powerful because there is oppositional energy, right? So we'll talk about that a little bit. Analytical and amiable, good. Driving and analytical, the person is difficult between amiable and expressive. That's so, Maria, you said this to everyone, so I can repeat it, that you're somewhere between driving and analytical, and the person who drives you crazy is amiable and expressive, and you just like hit the nail on the head. The difficulty is when we have people who are most different to us, okay? Analytical, and the other one is amiable and expressive. That's exactly it. We're going to go through toxicity right now. Great. Amiable versus expressive, driving. The description is spot on. I certainly see the value of all the styles, right? Not working, so I don't have a fear per se, but my challenge is figuring out what I want next. So you can use this a little bit to figure out what you want next. I would also look at the Myers-Briggs. And they all seem to fit. So maybe you're extremely versatile. We can talk about what that means later. So Okay. Julie, how do I get out of this? There we go. Okay. Okay, I'm going to skip this one for now because I already described in the Apple computer example, I described a little bit about the business cycle, right? So, okay. Now, this slide I always include because what you guys just discovered about the people who are different to us are the ones that typically drive us the most crazy, okay? And what the driving style the judgment that is often lobbied against the driving style is that they're impersonal, abrasive, short-sighted, because sometimes they're so determined to complete something that they don't want to see the complexity, and they come with an answer that's not sophisticated. And they can be accused of being a poor collaborator. I said earlier that these people will, if they feel like others aren't moving fast enough, they'll take back the work and they'll just become frustrated, right? The expressive can be a poor listener, impractical, distracting, because they want to talk about themselves and their weekend and what they did and how they, right? Their vacation, God knows where. And they can be manipulative or they can be viewed that way because they love the experience of people, but they're not necessarily as loyal as the amiable, okay? So these are people who you might have an amazing time and stay up drinking at a party with them until 3 a.m. And then 2 days later, they won't even remember your name, right? Because they just love the fun of it all. Whereas the amiable is very loyal, but they can be a conflict avoider, risk averse, permissive, right? So sometimes, even though they're amazing people managers, when someone needs to be fired, they just won't do it. They will delay and delay and delay, and they won't do it. And they can seem disengaged. So particularly to people on this side who are a little bit more proactive, that quality that the amiable has of waiting to see before I, say anything can actually appear like they don't care. And that can be very, very discouraging to a driving style person, okay? And then the analytical can be indecisive. They get caught in the weeds. They can't make a decision because there's so much information. They can seem very impersonal, so they can be extremely blunt. On occasion, not often, but on occasion. They can avoid, like crazy. They just want to leave a situation. And sometimes they just don't get it. So the expressive person will be in a client meeting and they just have so much intuition and they can read the client, but the analytical person doesn't have that same ease, okay? Now, here's the toxicity, okay? And just to be very clear about why this happens. These people share verbal assertiveness. These people share an orientation towards people, stories, opinions. These people share a verbal listening first, right? And these people share an adherence to facts and data. But as you can see, these don't share anything, and these don't share anything, okay? The driving style person is, I often use the example of it's Monday morning, there's a meeting, and the amiable comes in and says, hey guys, I have to go get coffee at the kitchen. Does anybody want a snack? And the driving person has had their coffee, they've eaten breakfast, they're there with their books, and they want to get to work, right? And so these people can really for the amiable person, the driving person can feel very ambitious. They only want to please management. They want to deliver results all the time. They don't care about anyone else. They only care about themselves. And they're not interested in teamwork, right? That's how they appear to the amiable. For the driving style person, the amiable can feel needy and clinging, annoying, inappropriate because they're talking about personal things at work. They can feel, again, disengaged, right? And that can drive the driving style person crazy, okay? And their casualness can drive them crazy. The expressive and the analytical, you guys probably get the idea. The analytical style person sees, it can drive them crazy because people respond so much to the expressive style. People like the expressive style, but very often the expressive style person doesn't have the facts. On the other side, the expressive people can look at these and say, you know, I know they're really smart, but they just don't get it. And I can't put them in front of a client because it's awkward, right? So these are things, other things that I hear is driving style people, when the expressive begins to talk too much, it drives them crazy because they want to get results, okay? Here, there's a loyalty issue. Sometimes the amiable person feels that the expressive isn't loyal enough or is flip or manipulative. These people can feel very secretive to others. Often the analytical style person is avoiding or wanting to keep things to themselves because they don't feel sure and they want to avoid embarrassment. What they don't realize is that to others, it can feel like they're hiding something and that they're keeping information for themselves. And that can feel not collaborative, okay? So these are just some things that I want you to be aware of. Now, how do you deal with this? When you are with a driving, not how do you deal with this? These are some of the behaviors that each style does when they feel out of control or when they feel a level of tension. So the driving style will take charge, right? And it can sound a little bit like, you know what? This isn't working. Julie, you do the computer, I'm gonna do the talking, and that's it, right? And so they become like very like that. The expressive is similarly assertive, but it's even less directional. Like they might just say, Julie, that's so stupid. Why would you do that? Right? And they just attack, okay? The amiable will acquiesce. So if that were to happen with Julie, she would go, well, right? Like they don't want to upset anything, so they'll just go along with it. Or I often say, if you're with an amiable and you say, oh, which restaurant do you want to go to? And they say, oh, it doesn't matter. You know, that's when you know that you're with an amiable, because they only care about being with you because it's relationship. They don't care what they eat, and they certainly don't want to speak up about it. And then the analytical will just, like, imagine they'll literally leave the room if they don't want to deal with it. But a lot of times, and I can say this because my husband is one, but they'll just shut down. So they'll be in a meeting and maybe they're engaging, and then all of a sudden, if they don't like what's going on, they'll just go, and at that point, you can't communicate with them anymore, right? So the thing that's important about this slide to know is that, in fact, these are all bad behaviors. These are immature behaviors that we all need to work to improve if we indulge in them, okay? And then finally, this message that really any style can succeed. So this is an example, and you know, forgive me that we don't have any women here, and forgive me that we don't have any non-Americans here. The reason we choose the presidents of the United States is that it is one consistent measure of success, right? But sometimes what I put here is on this upper right, I'll put, who wrote Sheryl Sandberg, right? She's gonna be a driving style. Oprah Winfrey is gonna be a big amiable style, right? John F. Kennedy, Jeff Bezos are in this expressive style for sure. Donald Trump is in the expressive style. And then here we have, which is interesting, we put Barack Obama, but I put Jacqueline Kennedy. And, you know, I often say that Jacqueline Kennedy was so detailed and she had so much style because her attention to detail was incredible.